Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar. Those who have attended and started up. We are going to start this webinar in about 1 minute. You should be able to see a screen that says ProSites presents how to hire right the first time. And in about 1 minute, we usually give people a chance to get logged in. We will start this webinar. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I really appreciate you taking the time to join this presentation today. It's called How to Hire Right the First Time. My name is Keith Washington. I'm the VP of Products here at ProSites. And before we go proper through the webinar, I just want to point out a couple of things that people ask about it. Number one, we are recording this webinar, and so you will get a copy of it at the end, so you don't need to jot down too many notes, although we encourage you to take down any notes or questions that you have. There will be poll questions that we're going to ask throughout the presentation, a few of them, and you can use your chat option to answer the questions. That's the first part of questions. And then the second part is there will be a Q&A session and time for Q&A at the end of the presentation, and for that you will use your questions panel. If you have questions throughout the presentation that are not associated with the poll, feel free to ask them in the questions panel. When Dr. Alfie asks you poll questions, use the chat window. We're really excited about the opportunity to present this topic. I just want to spend a minute on the next slide talking about ProSites. ProSites solutions provide you with a one-stop shop or an all-in-one solution for growing your practice. If you don't know about our solutions, we are the leading provider of websites, digital marketing, patient engagement solutions to the dental industry, and we're really focused on making sure that we help our dental practices acquire, engage, and retain their clients, and really focused on providing tools to help you with that. However, as you will know if you see the next slide that comes up, digital solutions or tools are only part of the story of your practice. And I hope that you've taken advantage of some of the opportunity to, automate your practice and find ways to make your practice even more efficient. But that's only part of the story. You also need a strong team to execute your plans and participate in your growth. When we were putting together the slides and the presentation for today's session, I kept thinking about the phrase from the original Ghostbusters movie. One of the characters said, "We have the tools and we have the talent." And with ProSite Solutions, you have the tools and the right team. And with the right team, you will have the ability to really have a top-notch dental practice. And that is what Dr. Alfie is going to talk about today. Dr. Geraldine Alfie was a practicing dentist and a business owner for 25 years. She sold her dental practice in 2017 and then completed her executive MBA degree in 2018. Her deep personal knowledge of what it's like in the trenches as a dentist, business owner, her ability to quickly build rapport with her clients and their teams, and her advanced training in how to strengthen communication, leadership, and business skills make her an ideal executive coach for dentist owners like you. Today, she's going to focus on this all-important topic of having the right talent to help your practice succeed. Welcome, Dr. Alfie.
Thank you, Keith. Can you all hear me okay?
Just fine.
Perfect. And I want to thank everybody who is joining us today, whether you're on your lunch break or if today was not your clinical day, you're taking time out of doing some other fun stuff. It's nice and sunny here in Chicago, so thank you for spending the next hour with us. I have a lot of information to be going through. I do tend to talk kind of quickly, so if there are questions that you have, as Keith said, you can type them into the chat box, and we are going to be having about 10 minutes of Q&A toward the end as well. As Keith said, I did practice and owned my own practices for 25 years. And during that time, I made more than my share of bad hires. As I matured, I realized how important it is to have a crystal clear vision of what your ideal employee looks like. Not only do you have to have a vision for your ideal practice, you have to have a vision of your ideal employee. Be specific. about the qualifications and qualities that you're looking for. And this goes far beyond evaluating only trained skills like clinical assisting, hygiene, or administrative skills. Years ago, one of my friends cautioned me not to weigh years of experience too heavily. He said, so what if someone has 20 years of experience? Maybe they just had the first year over and over and over again for 20 years. My point is that it's more important to look for someone who is willing and eager to learn, has a fantastic work ethic, and is passionate about customer service and teamwork. You can train everything else if it is the right person. So we're going to jump right in with our first poll question. So this is an interactive webinar. The first question I'd like to ask all of you to answer is, have you had team turnover within the past 18 months? Just type in Y or N. And then Keith, in about 15 to 20 seconds, will let me know what the majority of people said.
Okay, I'm standing by. I see some answers coming in. I see Ys. I see one N, but I see a number of Ys. Mostly Y.
Yeah, I
Mostly yes.
pretty much figured that was going to be the trend. And so if you did say no, congratulations. If you did say yes, you are so not alone. That is the number one challenge my clients and colleagues have right now. Regardless of your answer, let me ask you this. Is every person on your team a superstar? You don't have to type that in. Does every team member know exactly what's expected of her, what her job responsibilities are, how to do her job well, how to ask for help, how to offer help, how to play well with others, how to wow your patients, and how to create value for herself every single day? Superstar team members answer all of these. Yes, absolutely. If those questions made you feel like this, I'm ready to pull my hair out. Welcome to the club. As I said, you're not alone. I know firsthand how important it is to have a strong, well-trained, responsible, and accountable team of leaders if you want your practice to thrive. I know firsthand that the job market is super tight right now. I constantly hear my clients and colleagues lamenting that there are no good candidates out there, no matter what I'm willing to pay. It's tough, I know. But I want to ask you a few tougher questions. You don't have to type this in, just think about your answers to this. How well did you do with your last 3 to 4 hires before the pandemic? Are those people still with you? And if you had a choice out of 100 awesome candidates, would you hire every single person again? What I'm asking you is, are they all superstars? If your answer is, I'm not being critical, but let's face it, in dental school, we never learned how to run a headhunting and an HR department. So do not beat yourself up if you feel like your office has a revolving door when it comes to new hires, or if you feel like you're being held hostage by existing team members who seem to have a disconnect between what they demand and what they're willing to do for you. It's time to change the way you vet and hire new team members. So when we think about our costs that are associated with turnover, a recent Gallup poll said that employee turnover cost US businesses $1 trillion annually. Yes, you heard me right, $1 trillion. That poll also said that the cost of replacing an individual employee can range from 1/2 to 2 times the employee's annual salary. And they said that was a conservative estimate. So what does that mean for your dental practice? Let's use as an example the administrative team position. According to ZipRecruiter, the average annual salary for a dental receptionist is around $35,000 a year. That means on average, it's going to cost you anywhere from $17,500 to a whopping $70,000 to replace that position. If you think this sounds crazy and exaggerated, I'm sorry to tell you, this is true. Remember, I'm not talking only about what it costs you to go through the hiring process, but more importantly, the loss in productivity that always happens when you have team turnover. So let's take a minute to break down the direct and indirect costs that we face as business owners when losing a team member. The direct costs are going to include having to pay out any accrued vacation time, the recruitment costs for job postings, career event participation, things along that nature, background checks, drug screenings, skills or personality tests if they're not included with the job platform that you use, temporary worker fees to fill in the slots, overtime fees for remaining team members, and possible additional costs if you feel you must start to offer more benefits than you had to be able to attract talent. The biggest thing I hear is health insurance. A number of dental practices don't offer health insurance to their team members, and it is a no break thing for a lot of people when they're looking for a new position now. They are requesting or demanding health insurance coverage, which means if you give it to one, you got to give it to everybody. That can really start to skyrocket your costs. Make sure that person you're investing in is going to be worth it. That's just the money. What about the indirect costs? We know that productivity and efficiency go down when we have turnover during the recruiting and the hiring, and also during the onboarding and the training processes. Plus, you've now lost that knowledge base of that person, and it's going to take a new employee on average 6 to 12 months for her to really get her feet underneath her enough to become valuable to your practice. What about your time? Even if you have an office manager who's going to be running most of this, how much time do you know that you have to spend to write great ads, review resumes, review applications, do all those background checks I talked about, check references, and then finally sit down for the interview? That's going to pull either you or your office manager away from the other vital daily duties to keep your practice humming. It will also cut into your personal or your free time. I know when I was, when I owned my practices and I had to hire, there were many times that I was conducting interviews over a lunch break. And if I was doing it confidentially because I was looking to replace somebody, I had to do it after hours. What is your free time worth? We often neglect putting a price tag to what our free time is worth. It is worth a lot. We know that morale plummets when the team is overworked. They have less time and energy to be able to spend with your patients and making sure that nothing falls through the cracks during that transition time. It's not unusual to have the rest of the team start to feel some significant burnout. And what that's going to do is it's going to greatly decrease the level of customer service that your team is able to provide to your existing and new patients. The other thing I always tracked was, what was my ratio of treatment presented versus treatment accepted during those times? Because many times if we're all working harder with less help, we're not following through on all of our steps to ensure that I, as the doctor, am presenting treatment properly, that my assistant is supporting my suggestions, that she's doing a great handoff to my financial coordinator and scheduling coordinator, that they're taking the time to make sure that the patient understands and appreciates the treatment plan, goes ahead and books it, understands the financial arrangements, and then keeps that appointment. There are so many moving parts, I get it, in a dental practice, and not having the right people in place is going to make it so much harder for you to have the practice of your dreams. The dentists who consistently have the highest productivity and patient satisfaction ratings are the ones who take the time to hire the right people, evaluate their strengths and weaknesses, and put them in the right position where they can thrive. Then they train them like crazy and they provide support and systems that will ensure success. In Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, he talks about having the right people on your bus. So that analogy is having the right people in your practice. But the second step is make sure that those right people are in the right seats in your practice. Too often, we hire people who are just like us. While it's common and understandable, it's not the most effective way to build a superstar team. It's best to have different personality types so that as a team, you can brainstorm new ideas, get everyone involved, support each other, and measure your results. Those are 4 different personality traits, and all of them are necessary to fill in the gaps and ensure that things get done. Along those lines, Evaluate your existing employees and see if they are all in the right position. We all have natural skill sets. Some of us are super detail oriented and love to dive into a project, and others are more interested in ensuring that everyone in the office is included, feels heard, and feels welcomed. Both of those personality types are very important, and they're both best suited for very different jobs. That first one, the detail guy, could be a natural fit as your insurance coordinator, while the second one, the people person, would probably be a fantastic new patient concierge or your marketing source person. So evaluate your existing team members and see if one of them is better suited to shift into whatever your open spot is right now, and then try to fill that newly vacant position. Because maybe there's more opportunity to fill that other position than the one that you're looking at right now. They always say, we don't plan to fail, we just fail to plan. So if you want stability, high productivity and efficiency, and to keep morale up in your practice, you need to think about what you must provide as the leader to keep talented employees. You have to have a strong culture, a culture of communication and growth that encourages long-term employment, and have systems in place which document the workings of the practice for the inevitable turnover and change that we will all experience. When I owned my practices, I always said that I could train anyone to do anything in my practice if that person had an incredible work ethic, was willing to put in the effort to learn, and had a true team spirit. To me, that meant that everyone in the office did whatever was necessary within the legal limit of her training and licensure to take care of our patients and each other. Now, what did I do to ensure their success? I had a rigorous training program in place for every position in the office. I didn't rely on the previous employee to train the new team member. I had checklists and protocols that were available to everyone. I also had super technical support for them. We had every software known to man that was the best of the best, so that it made them easier to do their jobs really well. I had frequent check-ins. I had monthly meetings for the first 3 months of employment where that new hire and I could sit down one-on-one, review what she was doing really well, where she needed to improve, and then figure out what I needed to provide to her for help and support and additional training. I also reviewed action items with due dates so the new employee could benchmark her accomplishments and reach out when she needed more help. I provided measurable goals and action items, and I was very clear in my expectations for each stage of her journey. If you have all these pieces in place before you bring on a new team member, it's going to greatly increase the chance for your practice to grow and thrive. I can almost hear what some of you are saying right now. Sure, Geraldine, that's all well and good, but I just need a body. I hear this all the time. And here's my response. When you just hire a body, you often end up with a rotting corpse. If the rest of your team has been well trained, if they are self-motivated and accountable, you will be able to function through a downsize. They will come together and get it done. When you do have to just hire a body, I get it. I know how busy a dental practice is. I know that sometimes you just need someone in there to run instruments or turn over rooms. I know there are more things that we're doing now than we ever were. So I get it. If you really just need somebody in there to do some menial tasks, to take them off the shoulders of your other employees, make sure you and your team are clear that this is a temporary fix or a workaround. You should continue to review resumes and interview until you can find the right person for the long haul. You all probably know the phrase ABC, always be closing. I say ABI, always be interviewing. Because even with the most stellar team, life happens. People move. Family situations arise that require that employee to devote 100% of her time to her family, and that's completely understandable. Which is why it's a good idea to always have at least 1 or 2 potential candidates in your pipeline. It definitely reduces the stress you feel when you feel pressured to make a snap decision about whom to invite to join your dental family. This is our next poll question, so if you all can get ready, I'm going to ask you to type into the chat box. When you're searching for your ideal team member and you're evaluating the candidates, which of these 2 areas do you think is more important? Put a C for character or a T for technical skills. Which one do you weigh more when you're evaluating a candidate? Just be honest. and put that in the chat box. And then in about 15, 20 seconds, Keith, you can let me know.
Will do.
Thank you.
I'm standing by. I see a C, a couple of C's. Oh, so it's a little bit weighted towards C's so far. It's not some technical, but mostly character.
And those of you that typed in a C, absolutely. I don't know if everybody weighs these to this degree, but when I'm evaluating somebody to come and join my team, this is the way that I view what's most important to me in that person. It should be 90% what their character is, who they are being on a daily basis, and 10% of whatever technical skill set they're going to bring to the practice. So if we can all agree that character is more important, and those of you that said character, awesome. But I want to ask you to think, how much are you distributing the importance of each of these? And maybe it's time to shift it even a little bit more to ensure that you're bringing in great people as people. Now, since we all agree that character is so important, let's review the 5 top attributes that most major hiring companies have identified as important qualities to have superstar employees. The first is leadership skills. The second is communication skills. The third is organizational skills. The fourth is intelligence. And to me, that means that the person learns quickly, she can process new information without getting overwhelmed, and she has a natural critical thinking skill level. In addition, she's willing to do homework at the start. Great people understand if I'm learning a new subject. When we were in dental school, did we learn everything when we were sitting in lecture? If you did, you went to a very different dental school from me. I remember getting flummoxed on the first anatomy class when in about an hour, my instructor had covered pretty much the entire torso. And that was the muscles, the veins, the arteries, and all the nerve system. And we were expected to know it by the next class. And then she moved on. And I'm thinking, wow, that's a lot of work I got to do. Why am I paying so much for my tuition? But people that have great intelligence understand that there's a lot of self-work that has to go into achieving success. And the last, and by far not the least important skill attribute is integrity. I don't want anyone on my team whom I cannot trust 100%. If I look at this person and I think, I wouldn't even trust this person to babysit my pet goldfish, I don't want them on my team. It is very difficult for me to want to train you, invest my time, money, and effort to better you if I can't trust you. Again, you don't have to type this into the chat box, but I'm going to ask you a question and answer yourselves honestly. Who here has detailed and regularly updated job descriptions for every position in your practice? Is it part of your office manual? It's something for you to think about. If you don't already have these in place, it is necessary to make all of the rest of this go so much better, from finding the right people because you know exactly what you're looking for, what you can expect of them. And also it's a great way for your employees to be checking in to ensure that they're doing what you want them to do really well. There are 4 parts to a job description. The first is the primary function. That's basically a short paragraph that summarizes whatever that particular position is. So let's use as an example, the scheduling coordinator. So the primary function could be manage and control daily, weekly, and monthly doctor schedule in order to meet the practice production and collection goals, compile data to maintain business records and reports, ensure that every patient has an extraordinary experience. The second part of a job description are the major responsibilities. Those are the most important and most regular tasks. These are clear guidelines, so your employee knows what you expect of her. For this scheduling coordinator example, it could be manages the doctor's perfect schedule, manages scheduling and rescheduling of patients, and monitors all patient experiences to ensure that they all have an extraordinary experience. The third part of a job description are the objective and specific results. This is where details are really important. This is where you're guiding the employee on how you're going to monitor her results. How are we going to measure this? What does it look like when she's done her job really well? So now we get more specific. If we use for the example, manages the doctor's perfect schedule, the specifics are, she is responsible for maintaining my schedule at 100% scheduling to goal. She is also making sure that each day is scheduled with no more than 30 minutes of open time every single day. Obviously, that was specific for my practice. Your practices will be very different. But the clearer we can be with our team and have measurable goals for them, we're going to get much better results. As management guru Peter Drucker said, what gets measured gets managed. And the last part of the job description are the skills and qualifications. And I want you to go deeper than she must type 60 words per minute and you must have basic computer skills. Yes, of course, that should be part of it, but also include, think about personal qualities like multitasking, able to receive feedback constructively, flexibility, able to quickly shift from one task to another without losing focus. Those are important skill sets for any team member, don't you agree? You'll notice that we've been chatting for about 20 minutes and I'm just getting to the actual hiring process. So I hope this shows you how important it is for you as the leader to set the stage before you go looking for a new employee. You see all the prep work you have to do before you even post that ad if you want to get a great result. Here's an analogy that I love to use. If you're baking a new pie recipe, a lot of people have been doing a lot of baking over the last 18 months. So say your friend shared this great new pie recipe with you and you decide you want to try it. So what's your usual protocol? You're going to read through the recipe a couple of times, then you'll check to see if you have all the ingredients, make sure they're all fresh, and that you have the necessary quantities of each. Then you make your shopping list for the things that you need and go grab the items that you're missing. You return home, you set up your baking station, and then you start the process. My point here is that we often spend more time preparing for, which are arguably less important tasks than hiring a new person. Where are we putting our time? Where are we putting our effort? Set the groundwork so that you can get the result that you really want. So when you are writing your ads, here are the things that I recommend including. The first is a summary of your practice, especially emphasizing the culture of your practice. The more information that you share in your ad, especially about the culture, the better chance you have to hire a superstar. You want the people who have the attention span to read all the way through the ad. And you want the people who tell you when they contact you, wow, your ad just spoke to me. This is exactly the kind of practice I want to be working in. Make sure that you're clear on the job duties. I recommend having this as a bulleted list, so it's easy for them to be able to quickly scan through to see what is going to be required of them. Be clear in your expectations and what those duties are. What are your requirements for that candidate to apply with you? And go outside the box for positions that don't require licensure. You know, many times when we say for requirements, say it's a dental assistant position, we'll say must have 2 years of previous dental experience. When it came to hiring for assistants and admin, I almost never hired somebody with experience in another dental practice. My requirement was they had to have 2 years of customer service experience, because people that work in hospitality have great customer service experience. So whether they worked in retail or a restaurant or a gym or a beauty salon or a spa, they had great customer service experience. And if they could do those jobs, they knew how to multitask, they knew how to be a chameleon, to be able to connect with every single client, because when people work in hospitality, they make most of their money off of their tips. They know that they eat what they kill and they learn how to kill with kindness. And those are the people that I want working with me. Make sure you explain about what are vital behavioral traits that you're looking for. Be clear about that, and also what you will not accept. In one of the ads that I ran when I was still practicing, I had a couple of sentences that said, do you like to check Facebook and your social media personal accounts throughout the workday? Do you think it's okay to be surly to your coworkers and your clients? If you answered yes to either of these, we don't want you, because You have to be clear on not only what you want, but also what you will not tolerate. And then talk about what are the benefits of working in your practice. And I also recommend that this be a bulleted list. You want to wow them with everything that's great about working with you. And it goes beyond what you're going to pay per hour and what financial benefits you're going to offer, whether it's PTO or holiday pay or retirement contributions. How about lifestyle benefits? Like, we only work 4 days a week, so you get a long weekend every single week. We only work one evening each week. It's very important to us that our team members have a great work-life balance. We are looking to grow and develop every member of our team. We're passionate about CE. We have a state-of-the-art facility with incredible technology that support our team and help us provide the best care to our patients. Those are all really important factors for many people looking for a job. Out of the 5 things that people are evaluating when they're choosing a job and choosing to stay in a job, yes, money is always one of the top 5, but it's almost never the top 1. Almost across the board, it is respect from their boss and their coworkers and a feeling of fulfillment and engagement. I want to make sure that this person has great attention to detail. So how do I evaluate that? Obviously, the first thing I do is when I'm looking at their resume, I'm checking for spelling errors or any like really gross grammatical errors. And I always have action items as well. So it could be, when you apply for this job, please also attach your cover letter. Please make sure you fill out the assessments that we're going to be including, and any other things that you want to do to make sure that this person's going to go kind of the extra mile, because this is the first impression that they're going to be giving me of themselves. And make sure that you are requesting references. I suggest a minimum of 3, and at least one of them has to be from an existing or a former boss or employer, and at least one has to be from an existing or former coworker. It's a red flag to me if that person has been in the workforce for 5 to 10 years or more and has not one boss or coworker that they have listed as a reference. That's a red flag to me. Now, when it comes to reviewing the candidates, so you've posted your ad and now the resumes are starting to come in. So there are 4 stages of reviewing these candidates. The first is our resume review. I'm looking for any gaps in their employment history. I'm looking for how long they stayed in each of their previous jobs. I don't want people that, I used to call them leapfroggers, where they'd be in one practice for 1 year and then another practice another year, and then they're moving on to somewhere else for 6 months. I'm looking for long-term retention here. So I want people that, I don't care if it was in a dental practice, if they worked at, say, Target for 5 years and they had talked about how they had moved up in that company during that time, that's someone I want to meet. I also want to look for parallel experiences. As I have mentioned this before, anybody that worked in any kind of hospitality or retail setting before are usually have great customer service skills and are awesome at multitasking and knowing how to make themselves a chameleon to make all of the patients, all their different personality types, feel like we just get them. And then obviously I'm also checking for grammar and spelling errors. In the cover letter, because I do always ask for a cover letter too, because we get a little bit more information from the cover letter than we can get from only the resume. And I want to make sure if this person's going to be filling an admin role in my practice, you need to ensure that she can write well. She's a reflection of the quality of your practice, whether you like it or not. And since most of our communications nowadays are through email and text, I need to make sure that she can compose a good paragraph or 2 to be able to talk back and forth with my patients. And usually in the cover letter, you can start to see the personality of that person coming through a little bit more. So again, depending upon the type of position you're looking to fill, if it's something like insurance coordinator, you may be looking for someone who's more formal and buttoned down. If you're looking for somebody to replace the new patient concierge, you're going to want someone whose personality just bubbles through their cover letter. And it also needs to be reflective of what's the personality of your practice. Now, if you're using Indeed, which I love as a job hiring platform, I have nothing to do with them, you know, as far as I don't get kickbacks or anything, but I just love what they've been doing. And one of the additional tools that they offer are assessment tests that they will send to the candidates, and the candidate has to complete these And then we get their ratings based off of what their answers were. And Indeed offers about 20 different kind of assessment tests. The three that I always like to focus on are the customer focus and orientation. There's a verbal communication assessment and an attention to detail assessment. And then Indeed will rank them based on their proficiency. So in ascending order, they can score either a completed, which is kind of like an E, a familiar, which is kind of like a D, a proficient, which is kind of like a C, highly proficient, which is equal to an A grade, and expert, which is an A grade. And I usually only want to meet with people who are scoring highly proficient or expert in those areas. Now, attention to detail and follow through. I want to make sure that person is following my directions carefully. If I asked that all correspondence happens only through this job posting website, or I have a specific email address for correspondence, and they disregard that, and they contact my office or walk into my office or call, what if I was posting this confidentially? They somehow figured out who I was, because sometimes they can do that, right? And they just show up in my office to talk about the job opening. Well, what if I was posting it confidentially because I was replacing somebody that was already on my team? Could that be quite uncomfortable for me? So I want to make sure that my instructions are clear, and then I'm going to be evaluating those candidates on how well they followed my instructions. And I also want to make sure that they have great follow through. If I ask them to submit a cover letter, did they provide references as well? And did they complete the assessments? If they did all of those things, I am ready to move to the next step, which is the first interview. And you read that right. If I say first interview, that means it's not the last interview. So now I reviewed all the resumes, I've read all the cover letters, I've reviewed the assessments as well, and I've chosen the top 2 to 3 candidates to take to the next step. Now, when you look at this photo, you don't have to type this into the chat box. Again, this is just a question for you to think about. Based on the size of the word bubbles in the pictures, which person do you think is the interviewer and which person is the candidate based on the size of the word bubbles? Which one of these people should be doing most of the talking during the first interview? The purple person is the candidate. On the first interview, I want to learn as much as I can about that person. So I try to talk very little, ask open-ended questions, and then tons of follow-up questions. And I want you to just think about, is this reflective of how you're normally running your interviews? No need to put that in a chat box, just think about that. During that first interview, some of the questions that I always ask are, I ask them to walk me back through their resume. I want them to tell me what I can't know from a one-page introduction. I want them to fill in the gaps if there are any years or months missing. If I've got someone who's coming in for an interview and she has a 5-year gap in her employment history, and she tells me, I decided to take that time off because I wanted to stay home and raise my kids, totally get it. I understand that, and I actually appreciate and applaud her values. I'm fine with that. If someone comes in and they have a 5-year gap and they've got no discernible explanation for it, that's a red flag to me. What I'm most looking for during this is to see if I can figure out what are the candidates' values. And so the questions that I ask to figure this out, to find out what's important to them and also what they're going to bring to the table. I ask, describe for me your best boss ever. Why do you feel that way about him or her? Describe for me your worst boss ever, and why do you feel that way? What do you expect from your coworkers? What can they expect from you? Describe for me your perfect and ideal working environment. And what are you looking for in your next position? What I'm looking for an answer there is not, I want to make X amount of dollars. I want to hear things like, I felt like I had just plateaued where I was and I really want to learn more, or I want to expand my, my skill sets. I want to just blow the doors out on what my potential is. Those are the kinds of answers that I'm looking for during this period. Obviously, when it comes to their experience, one of the things I always ask is, describe for me how you handled an upset customer in the past. If that person's been working for more than a couple of years and they've been in any part of the service industry, and in healthcare, we're in the service industry, they've had an upset customer in the past. I don't care that people make mistakes. Another management guru, Tom Peters, used to say he actually liked it when he went into a restaurant or a store and somebody screwed something up, because we all do. We're all human. What he would then evaluate people on is, how did you handle it when it happened? How did you manage my expectations after that? Did you go above and beyond? And that is how he then rated how great an experience was. So I want to see, do they have great problem solving skills that, hey, when this happened, I found a way to make this customer happy. Not only were they happy, they then ended up referring people to us because of how well I had handled it, versus, oh, I don't know, I just kind of, did the blame game or ignored it or buried my head in the sand to try to hope that it was going to go away, or just, focused on it and wallowed in it. That isn't the kind of person that I'm looking for. I asked them, how organized are you? And how do you feel that you're organized? Can you give me an example? Because if you ask somebody, are you organized? No one's going to tell you, no, I'm totally disorganized. But if they say, yes, I have great organizational skills, I'll say, okay, great. Can you give me an example of how you use that? I want to know how they learn best. Do they like to read? Do they like to listen? Or do they like to do? And how can they tell me when they've mastered a new skill or a new task? And how long does it take them to master a new skill or a new task? All of these questions are designed to figure out if this person is a good cultural fit for my practice. And the last thing I always ask is, when can you start? If the person says right away and she's currently employed, that's a huge red flag to me. I don't want someone who has so little regard for her boss and coworkers that she's willing to leave them in the lurch without proper notice. The next step is checking references. Make sure that you specify, as I mentioned, at least one reference must be a former boss or existing boss if they're just moving, and one must be from a coworker. And the candidate should have supplied them when she gave her application. If she didn't, make sure that she brings them to her first interview, because I will not proceed until I get to talk to at least one professional reference. This is so important. These are some of the questions that I'm going to ask that reference. And for any of you that have ever experienced this, I had a time when one of my employees, this was years ago, just didn't show up for work one day. Didn't show up for work. We tried to contact her, called, emailed, text, nothing. Job abandonment, right? It's 5 or 6 months later, I get a call from another doctor who is asking me for a reference for this woman. I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe that she listed me as a reference. I'm thinking, is she crazy? Now, as much as we want to tell the other doctor exactly what happened, you have to remember to be really careful, because you can set yourself up to be liable if you say anything bad about somebody else. So the code is, if someone starts to ask you these questions, or you start to ask the reference these questions, and their answer is, I can verify that so-and-so's start date was June 1st, 2020, and her last day working was July 1st, 2020. Okay, great. Can you tell me about the quality of her work? I can verify that so-and-so started June 1st, 2020, and her last day was July 1st, 2020. If someone is repeating that back to you, that is secret code for, I probably would not rehire this person. I just can't go into detail about why. So make sure that if they don't come back with that, and you're asking them these questions and they're very, kind of one-word answers, it could be that that's just the way that that person talks, but it may also be that they're not glowing about them. When I had great team members leave for various reasons, they moved or, were doing a completely different type of position, they couldn't, the person that was calling for the reference, like, they could barely get me off the phone. I was so happy to talk about how great this person was. That's what you want to hear when you're calling to check on a reference. So now we come to the second interview. And here's where I do want you to type into the chat box, please, if you normally have a candidate back for a second interview. So please type yes or no. And then Keith, you can let me know.
Standing by. Sorry. Nope, I see. It's a little, it's a mix.
Okay,
Mostly yes.
great. That's awesome.
Mostly yes.
Okay, that's awesome. It's a really important part. Now, on this second interview, The roles are flipped. So when you look at this picture, now I am the purple person. I'm doing most of the talking, because if this person has jumped through all these hoops, I want to wow that candidate and I want to make her so excited to be part of my team. So then I review all of my financial and non-financial benefits, which I reviewed when I was talking about posting the ad. I'm going to go into more detail about those during this interview, talking about their, their hourly rate, if I do paid lunch breaks, bonus system, PTO, paid holidays, retirement plan contribution, CE courses, dental treatment, and then the non-financial benefits, including lifestyle, extensive training, room for advancement, personal development, fun stimulating work, ability to grow, be self-sufficient, not be micromanaged. All those things that I said are so important to so many candidates. Now, you don't have to type this into the chat box, but the third part of the interview process is to have that person sit down with your team. If you have worked really hard to build and sustain a strong culture in your practice, you must be protective of that. All it takes is one toxic coworker to unravel all the hard work that you and your team put into establishing your culture. And often your team is going to pick up on some red flags that you may have missed. It's especially true if you're feeling kind of pressured to fill a slot. Sometimes our sensory acuity is a little out of whack during those periods. And so you may overlook things, some clues that your team is going to pick up when they're talking to the candidate. Plus, they tend to have a different kind of rapport because they're more colleagues rather than someone trying to really wow their potential boss. They'll be a little bit less formal. And so sometimes the team can gain some more insight that you won't during those 2 times that you met with that person. Now, if my team, after meeting this candidate, gives their blessings, comes in and says, hey, Dr. Alfie, this girl rocks. We got to get her on our team right now. Then I'll go ahead and make my offer. If the candidate doesn't give me a yes or a no on the spot, then I'll give her a time limit as to when I need to hear back from her one way or the other. And it's usually 2 days. So if it's a Wednesday, she's met with the team comes in and tells me they love her. If the candidate has already left the office, I'll get in touch with her and let her know I'm willing to make you a job offer. Here's what I'm offering. If they don't say yes right then, I'll say, I understand if you need to think about this. My request is that I need to hear back from you no later than Friday at 5 p.m. because I am interviewing other people and I want to open up that slot for somebody if you decide that this isn't the right fit for you for whatever reason. I know it's easy to say don't rush when it comes to hiring, but I can't stress this enough. Most of us, unfortunately, are not super proactive about providing comprehensive training, setting realistic goals, and evaluating new hires. We usually just jump back into our daily routine when a new person comes into our practice, and we hope that that person's going to figure it out. And then we wonder why 6 months later that person seems to have plateaued or just turned out to be not so great. Well, let me ask you this. For those of you who are married or in a serious relationship, would you have married that person after just one date? If you didn't have that person meet your friends, your family, your inner circle, would you have married them? Didn't you talk to them about what your expectations were for your relationship, what you saw your future looking like? Did you take the time to get to know them, show them you were interested, and give them support? When we hire someone after one meeting and then expect it to work out like gangbusters, I feel we're setting ourselves up for failure. So a take on this quote, which is marry in haste, repent in leisure. When it comes to business, my advice is this: hire slowly and fire quickly. If you have reasonable expectations, you provide robust training and support, you give candid and regular feedback, the right candidate will thrive. If that person turns out not to be the right fit for your practice, it's kinder to break ties sooner rather than later. That way you can open up that slot for the best person to join your team. I always tell my clients that you can have the best systems, protocols, checklists, technology, and procedures in place. But if you don't have the right team, nothing will get done sustainably in the long run. Our employees, our human capital, is our greatest asset. Invest wisely and protect it. So I have 2 special offers for those of you who attended today's webinar. The first is email me after the webinar and I will send you a copy of one of my proven ads that I have used myself very successfully when I was practicing, and I've shared it with my clients. And in their words, that ad has helped them find one of the best employees they've ever had. You can use it as an outline and change it to best suit your practice and the position you fill, but it's a good starting point for you if you feel like your ads have been not attracting the kind of people that you want. So that's the first offer. The second one is, I know how hard it is to fit all of these necessary steps into your life when you're seeing patients all day. So if you want more hand-holding during the hiring process, I am offering 15% savings on my hiring support package to those of you that have attended this webinar. That includes a 1.5-hour coaching call where I will be learning about you, your practice, what you're looking for as far as a team member, and what position you need to fill. I'll also be reviewing with you how to look at resumes and evaluate them quickly. I will also be reviewing with you the interview questions, and we can do a little role playing on what those questions are like and how to word them so that you get the most information that you possibly can from that candidate. From the information that you give me, I will then write you a specific written ad for your practice for that particular position. I will also give you about 24 sample interview questions that some are better geared for the first interview and some are better suited for the second interview. Then once you have submitted your ad and you've reviewed resumes, in general, these tend to come, you'll get like a bunch at the beginning of the week and then a few toward the end of the week. So when you've started to wean out and you have like your top, 5 to 8 candidates, you reviewed them, you can send me those resumes and cover letters and I will go through them as well. There's a maximum of 15 that I'll do for that. And hopefully you shouldn't have to go through more than that before you get to the interview process. Once I look at the resumes and the cover letters, and if they have assessment tests, I'll look at those too. And then I can go ahead and tell you, hey, candidate A looks fantastic. I would recommend bringing that person in for an interview. So then you're going to see that person for that first interview. After that, I will have a 30-minute interview with that candidate. I'll do a Zoom interview with that person. And remember, I can be much more objective than the doctor who's looking to fill the slot because I'm not emotional about it. And it's a very different dynamic when I'm talking to this candidate than from when the doctor is talking to the candidate, because the candidate, they kind of don't know why I'm talking to them. So they tend to be a little bit less formal. And because I'm very well trained in sensory acuity and I know how to look for and listen for clues that they're not saying, I can usually get a really good feel about who that person is and whether or not they're going to be a good fit for your practice from what I know from what you told me on that first call. I will do 4 of those. So that's 2 hours total of interviews that I'll help support you with. For all of that, which I normally charge $35.05, I have a limited offer of $29.79 that includes all of that. So that's a savings of $526 and it's valid until July 9th, 2021. I want you to think about what it's costing you in turnover or running short-staffed and think really hard about what your personal time is worth. If you remember at the beginning of our webinar, I said the Gallup poll stated that a conservative estimate to replace an employee is half her annual salary and can be as high as 2 times her annual salary. That means even for the lowest paid team member, that's at least $15,000 to $20,000 that you're losing by either not filling the slot or by having a revolving door. So I want to thank you all for your time. This is my contact information, so you can follow up on my offers, or if you have additional questions about how executive coaching can help you and your practice. I've walked in your shoes. I know the pain points of practice ownership. I've been where you are. I'd love to help, and I hope that you found this session helpful. I want to remind you that hiring great people is the first step. You must give them great support so that they can succeed. In today's day and age, that means a robust platform of services and software tools that will greatly increase their productivity, improve their efficiency, and allow them more time to spend with your patients. This is why I was so excited to partner with ProSites for this webinar. We see our service offerings as a perfect marriage to help dentists and their practices thrive. So Keith, I'll turn it back to you. If there were some questions that came through, I'm sorry, we got about 5 minutes left for us to wrap up and go through a few questions. So back to you, my friend.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Alfie, for that and that all that great information that we have. Just a reminder for those who haven't done so already, there's an opportunity to ask questions. Any question will do. I'm going to moderate the questions that I've already seen. And so if you have any questions, you type them in the questions box and I'll ask them of Dr. Alfie. One of the first questions that came in, and I think you talked about it a little bit, as a matter of fact, I'm almost sure you did, but this is a lot about hiring people. But if I can't get my existing employees to do the tasks I've assigned them, how can I get them to train a new member? And I hear this, by the way, a lot, where, the teams, what do you do about my existing staff?
Well, that's what I do as an executive coach. So, because I do hear that a lot. Whenever I ask a potential client, what are your three biggest pain points right now? Almost universally, it's my schedule. My schedule is either too empty or too busy. My team, either they can't get along or they don't do what I expect them to do. And then inevitably, if those two things are present, it shows up in your finances, right? So it may be, and here's a hard thing for the doctors to hear. And often I find this once I start evaluating practices and getting to know the teams. It's not so much that the team members aren't fantastic. Sometimes there are people that need to go, absolutely. I find often it's because as the leader, we have not been clear in our expectations of what we want those people to do. We have not trained them properly. We've expected them to kind of figure it out on their own. And then we wonder why we're getting the results that we're getting. So, when we talk about how do you set yourself up for success, you're very clear in your goal, you have clear expectations, you understand why you want that, and so do the people that you're asking to help reach your goal. Then you take massive action. And in a case like this, it means whipping the existing team members into shape, having them evaluated to see who's really a superstar in the rough. Because when people are floundering, they have all different kinds of personalities that come out. When people are frustrated, they have their automatic go-to, which could be to either snap at each other or gossip or just shut down. And maybe there's someone who's actually a great person, but is just overwhelmed with what's going on. So I don't mean this to be critical of the doctors, but as a doctor myself, I started working with a coach 20 years ago, and the best experience I had with her was also the hardest experience I've had as a professional. And that was when she did what I call holding up the ugly mirror. When I was going on about my team wasn't doing this and I can't get my team to do this and they're doing this wrong. And she said, Geraldine, I need to ask you a hard question. What's the one constant with all the team members that you've had? And I said, she's like, mirror, it's you. If we aren't really strong leaders, it is unrealistic for us to think that our team can flourish. And so as an executive coach, that's one of the things that I really help bring to the table, is to help evaluate the team, the ones that should stay, make sure that they start getting some great training. I do in-office training sessions. That's part of my executive coaching package, and work with the doctor to become a much stronger leader. We're not taught leadership skills in dental school, or communication skills, or business skills. And you have to have those really under your belt to have a great team and a great practice.
That's fantastic. There's a couple other questions, but we are out of time. And I think that I really appreciate you putting together this information. For everyone who's on this webinar, please take a look at the slide. You should see if you have other questions for Dr. Alfie, or if you want to engage her, make sure that you reach out to her right away. And you can see the website as well as the phone number. And I really appreciate you, Dr. Alfie, talking about how digital solutions can help you and the tools that ProSites offers to help practices get more patients as well as keep the patients. Please reach out to us if you have questions about our solutions, from websites to reminder systems to online forms, all of the things that are helping to transform dental practices today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Alfie. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Dr. Alfie, for presenting this information. We hope that you guys found it really, really important, really, really useful, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Keith. Thanks to ProSites, and thanks to all of you. Have a great rest of your afternoon.